South Korea man.
Oh,
How are
hello.
you
Can
with
you hear
us?
me?
Yes,
We
we
can hear you
can.
clearly. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sorry for my English. My English is very rusty. I've been using it for a while, so I apologize for that. Okay, so I've been a fan since about of this show since for about 2 years.
Mm.
At the time before COVID, and the recent Dalvani, that person Dalvani, am I pronouncing his name right? Yes. That situation uh, uh, reminded me of something you said in 2019 about Putin and possibility of him retiring in a few years.
Yeah.
What happened to that? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the whole situation, COVID and Biden basically pushed that thing into the far distant future, I think.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Can I first of all say that I presume you are from South Korea?
Yes,
I've
right.
been to South Korea. I was hugely impressed. I've been to Seoul, and I just wanted to also say that South Korea is one of the most beautiful countries I have ever seen. I mean, I walked through the mountains there. I was just stunned by the beauty and the modernity and the tremendous achievements that I saw in South Korea. Hugely impressed by South Korea indeed. But coming back to Putin, I think you're absolutely right. I think there were probably plans a few years. I think the man wanted to resign, actually, or at least retire. And I think when this time last year, it looked as if he was going to stay on, I was actually rather dismayed. I said to myself, this isn't a good thing at all. They need a transition. And they need a transition soon because, you can't have the same leader in charge all the time. I have to say, after recent events, I've rather changed my mind about this. I'd say that with all the challenges with the Biden administration and with all that's going on at the moment, you need someone who's absolutely at the top of his game in charge. And I think lots of Russians at the moment are saying to themselves, well, in theory, we would like to see a new leader, somebody take over. But at the moment, we can't afford to let this man go. So I think this is, I don't think I'm misrepresenting things. I think it's disappointing. I think it's sad in a way. I think a country should have a rotation of leaders. But given how unstable the situation is internationally, I'm frankly relieved at the moment that he's actually there. I mean, he's a level-headed person of immense experience, great diplomatic ability, and in full control of his government. And that's probably the optimal person you can have at this time. And that's probably why we're hearing so much less about a Putin succession, precisely because at this moment in time, there's less interest in it and less need for it, because both in Russia, they want him, and outside Russia, they say, well, he's clearly going to remain there, at least for a while. I still think personally, even if he decides to stand again in 2024, he's probably expecting or hoping that he'll start to leave. But, given how tangled and critical the situation is at the moment, I think that probably that's been pushed back into the distance. Not entirely a good thing, that in many ways not a good thing at all, but there we are.
Oh, the reason why the whole Dalvani situation reminded me of that is because this is a basically classic move the Western power uses in situation that Putin is in, because Putin is, I mean, to be honest, he's an enlightened autocrat rather than a president of a liberal democracy. I mean, to be honest, but at the same time, the social infrastructure, social culture and infrastructure is basically an import of a liberal democracy, awkwardly merged. It's basically an Augustine settlement type of situation. And that is very familiar to a Korean because that's basically a situation we had with old President Park in the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
And the West also had the whole assassination of a liberal politician thing. They did that before. And it basically worked because once President Park was assassinated because of issues with China and the detente and a lot of economic things, basically that that system collapsed, and basically Korea is basically a neoliberal society right now.
Right.
It basically copies of the U.S. system. So,
Yes.
the thing with Navalny is the timing is off, and American social soft power is nowhere near what it was in the 70s.
Yes.
And I think the neocons got confused. They think they still have that soft power, but now they don't. So, and they misuse the Navalny card because of that situation.
Yeah.
And so, but there's still a matter of Putin is not young, so
No.
and he doesn't actually have an heir. At least Trump has a heir and a spare and a daughter he uses as a shield against criticisms. But Putin doesn't have anyone, and the whole governing by in shadow things is really tricky if your successor is actually a competent person. So the whole situation is really awkward. And considering Russia up to now, Russia's situation was difficult, but actually straightforward. Now is not as difficult, but really tricky situation. So he might not actually be able to leave, and that is what happened with President Bach. He could not leave, and he got assassinated because of that situation. So I mean, I was wondering, what is the future regarding that? I mean,
well,
if Putin leaves, does it collapse?
We don't know. I mean, I personally don't think it will collapse. I think quite the opposite. I am of the view that the institutions that exist in Russia are becoming steadily more solid. I think if you were talking, we dialed back to a period like, say, the mid-2000s, then the system did depend very much on Putin, and the system that existed then was deeply personalized. But I think since then, it has begun to gain increasing institutional coherence. Having said that, I mean, Putin staying and Putin going is a very sensitive topic in Russia, certainly amongst political Russians. And there is always this uncertainty. I mean, what exactly will happen when he's gone? I mean, for one thing, any country which has had the same leader for a very long time, and Putin's been there now for what, 20 years, more than 20 years. I mean, there is beginning to say, well, what is life like? What is life going to be like when he's gone? What kind of a country will we be? Who can take his place? And at the moment, I have to say, there doesn't seem to be any person who one can obviously say, well, look, he's the coming man or woman. He's the person who's going to take over. He's the person who's going to be in charge. So I don't think it's going to fall apart. I don't think it's going to be taken over by neoliberalism. I think it's a more coherent and stable society than that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a certain brittleness about the political system in Russia, and one that makes people nervous. So that's my overall view. But no one can completely be sure what's going to happen. Certainly, if you go to the Chinese media, the great worry the Chinese have is that when Putin goes, this relationship that they forged with China might prove less lasting, because whoever replaces him might be less committed to it than he is. I doubt it again myself. I think this is, at the moment, so obviously in Russian interests to continue, that it will continue. But again, there are those uncertainties and those doubts, which are certainly there.
Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Oh, and
Thank
one
you.
thing.
Yes.
Oh, can I one thing? Oh, I've heard a lecture. I attended a lecture of some Korean bureaucrats that work closely with with Chinese bureaucrats, and
Yeah.
the feeling I got is that China very deliberately structured its overall political system using America as a benchmark. So it's basically America without like the things that they don't want, but they copied a huge amount of what America is. So it's like America, but slightly America with Chinese characteristics. So I think that's what Americans don't understand. It's like it's a basic altered view of like 1945 America. It's China's 1945 America without the pecky democracy thing. So that's what they don't get. It's like it's not a competitor. It's an heir almost like to America, and that's what Americans don't really get. It's like, and so basically, the son taking over the father's position type of situation. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, South Korea man. Great observation. Thank you very much.